Hello and welcome back once again to Rage Gaming and Lies of P. We are now in the end game. A majority of us at this point are in those final chapters of the game. With that, we've decided to make a video dedicated to some of the best weapons and a couple items that you will find in those final chapters of 7 through to 11. Where do you find these weapons and items? Why are they good weapons in particular? This video isn't exactly a comparison of these weapons per se though, like a ranking compared to one another, but a selection of the best weapons you want to consider in those final chapters where you find them. We begin with a weapon that you'll find at the end of chapter 7. This is the Frozen Feast, which is gained from the boss Ergo of Champion Victor and could be traded with alidoro to get the weapon. As a greatsword, it's heavier and a bit slower and naturally is a Motivity focused weapon with B scaling in Motivity and C in Technique as a starting point for the scaling. Visually quite cool. As you can see in the image, there's blue underneath, and yet to begin with, it's all rock and stone. This is because there's a mechanic where as you attack, you gradually start to chip away at the stone, and as you can see, we begin to reveal the true weapon which lies underneath, this sort of blue ice crystal. And now, as that's fully exposed and all the stone's gone, you're attacking slightly faster, quite literally improving the slower moveset of this type of weapon, which is generally very slow, but as you can see, heavy hitting. Quite a satisfying weapon. The issue with a slower weapon like this is with the lack of a poise system, you will be interrupted during a lot of your attacks, so you want to make use of these slower weapons, fast attacks like running heavies and otherwise to bypass that, including say using the puppet string to do a quick attack, using the weapon's damage and evading at the same time. However, if I stop attacking, you can see that the stone kind of regenerates and we go back to a much slower moveset initially to break through it again. It charges fables pretty well, and the fables are pretty important too. For example, the single fable bar, Liberate, instantly exposes the weapon, so you don't have to go through that process of chipping away at it, and it makes this weapon a lot more relevant and a lot more viable. Then we have the single slash, which is basically just a single very strong hit, which to be honest for 3 fable bars feels like it could be hitting a bit harder. So overall I rate this weapon lower on the list of items in this video because, you know, the liberation of the sword, it doesn't last that long, and it'd be nice if we could say liberate the sword in other ways than just attacking. What if by perfectly guarding? What if you could use your grindstone to expose it? There'd be more ways to make the weapon a bit more viable, but I do like it. It's quite unique, and I think a lot of people will find this weapon appealing. Which brings me nicely to highlight another item of this list, which is the Arm of God amulet, which is the boss ergo trade you can make for the same boss, the final boss of chapter 7. Trading Champion Victor's ergo for, instead of the weapon, the amulet, you get an incredible concept. While wearing it, you increase your physical damage after a successful attack, basically a successive hit amulet. The faster you attack, the more physical damage you'll build up, so the fastest weapons of the game should definitely consider running this amulet as part of their build. It's going to be very good there. The very existence of this amulet means, you know, Frozen Feast as a greatsword is a bad take unless you're specifically really wanting to use that greatsword. So the amulet is going to be much more handy for more builds in general. Next up, we have a very gnarly weapon, the Live Puppet's Axe. I mean, just look at this thing. It's the puppet body parts kind of screwn into an axe. Very heavy cleaver. So ultra slow, but very heavy hitting, of course. We find this one in chapter 8 when progressing to the second stargazer of that region. At one point, you'll enter an open area with an annoying ballista-style machine that fires down at you from a tower. If you cross the water and go to the tower it's firing from, you can just climb a ladder, go up there and destroy it. And right next to that is the chest which contains the weapon, so it's quite easy to get. In regards to the weapon, it's a Motivity scaler with D in Technique, B in Motivity. We could improve this to say A in Motivity, but to really make this one of the better weapons in the whole game, I think it needs to reach S scaling. It does come with some very good fable arts in the form of Killer Attack and Endure though. Killer Attack, the fable art, is quick for its 2 bars that it uses, and as you can see, leads to very quick stagger build up, which then can be followed with heavy hits for the fatal attacks that follow up. The incredible Endure fable art is one of the best in the game in my opinion. Essentially, you have a moment to endure for 1 fable bar. During that time, you take massively reduced damage, like ultra reduced, must be like 90%, and you won't get staggered. So Endure allows you to take hits that you otherwise wouldn't be able to take and go for the combos that follow with a slower weapon. Again, you overcome that by doing running heavies, which are a lot faster with a slower weapon like this, or making use of Legion arm attacks like the puppet string one, which is a top tier pick. The weapon is essentially held back by its super slow moveset. But if this appeals to you and you're willing to go through the challenge in this game that is using a slower weapon, this is a good pick. Now it's time to mention one of the most important collection boxes in the whole game. It results in multiple really important buff grindstones like the Satisfaction grindstone, increasing your weapon's critical rate, which can be vital for a variety of fast high crit weapons. It unlocks a weapon, the Pistol Rock Drill, and 2 amazing amulets. The Transformation Amulet, which is ideal for an advanced build, and more important, the Blue Guardianship Amulet, providing health, stamina, and Legion gauge as well. Basically the Ring of Favor ring if you play the Dark Souls games. Super good, really recommend you get this. The Fancy Collection box will increase the shop inventory with the Puppet Butler here in the Hotel Krat, and you find this box near the second Stargazer of Chapter 8, the Stargazer being Barren Swamp. From the Stargazer, head forward and hang right, kind of hugging the wall on your right as you follow through the swamp. Before too long, you'll pass through a gap under a bridge above, and on your left around the corner here is the box that has the item, the box within. Take it back to Hotel Krat, use it with the butler to improve the stock, and now you can buy the various options within that. I think this is really important to know about, so yeah, it's in this video. All right, now it's time for a really good weapon, which is unlocked after the final boss of Chapter 8, the Green Monster in the Swamp. With that boss ergo, you can trade with alidoro to get this weapon, the Two Dragons Sword. This is one of the coolest weapons in the game, thanks to its ultra fast moveset in general, sure, but its heavy attack is one of the coolest things you will find. This heavy attack has a counter aspect to it. So like when you perfect guard at the right moment and completely mitigate damage and maybe even stun the enemy, you know, go for a stagger. When you charge this heavy, you can see there's a sort of pop motion, and right at that moment, you can go for the parry. It has a wind up though, so you will have to do it before the attack actually comes to land, and then you can see that we can do it, and it's an instant stagger in this case, which is great. There is an amulet that improves your damage after getting a perfect guard, so that would work perfectly with this weapon. If you just tap the heavy, you get a nice backward step, so the movement is really cool. It also has a nice gap closing running heavy, and in general, the combos for this weapon are fantastic. When we look at the details of the weapon, it begins scaling with a technique of A, which you can improve to S scaling, so it's undeniably one of the best technique scaling weapons you can find. Further, when we start looking at the Fable Arts, things get very exciting. The combo, the triple triangle, is actually an evasive movement. The first one is a literal dodge, which then you can follow up with the rest of the combo to continue doing attack, sure, or probably better, you just use the dodge to dodge. It's a really good dodge, and then you can follow it up with basic attacks or heavies or whatever. Alternatively, the Wind of Swords is super cool, a medium ranged wind attack, which can be used to build up stagger, which is awesome, or just do safe damage. So it's ultra good, and it's very wide reaching, as you can see. Overall, it just plays really well, it scales really well, it looks and feels really cool, and with your ability to guard counter with one of its attacks and evade through another, it's honestly one of the highest skill weapons and rewards high skill, which is going to appeal to a lot of people. Next up, we have the Coil Mjolnir. If you are a fan of bonking and hammers, truly look no further, as this is quite literally a metal hammer on a stick. With not the most inspired moveset, because to be honest, hammers never really have a very unique moveset. It's quite vertical with the heavies and then horizontal with the lights, so that's quite a versatile moveset, thankfully. Obviously, it's a Motivity weapon with a standard scaling of B in Motivity and D in Technique. We could push that to A to make it better, but it does come with absolute defense, one of my favorite defensive Fable Arts in the game. In short, it extends your perfect guard window, making it very easy to land perfect guards. And that's how I progressed my first half of the playthrough, using exactly that Fable Art with a different weapon. Its triple Fable Art bar attack, Thunder Strike, is 3-in-1 for 1 downward slam, dealing, as you can see, electric damage, massive damage, stagger, and causes a stagger for a fatal attack. It's kind of insane for a single attack. Sure, there's a wind up, but as you can see, it's well worth it. And the base kind of electricity of the weapon is very important for when dealing with puppets. It's absolutely a puppet destroyer. To get this one then, it's right at the start of Chapter 9. You head out into a familiar courtyard we first saw at the start of the game with the way the story loops back in itself, leaving the Krat Central Station lobby, and on the back left of the open courtyard, courtyard is a bunch of luggage, which has a chest in the middle. It is surrounded by enemies, so you'll have to deal with them, but within the chest is indeed the coil. It's quite easy to get. Alright, so before we get into the final 3 weapons I'm highlighting, I just want to talk about what is arguably the best Legion arm throughout the whole game. This is the puppet string, which when fully upgraded gets the attack link special attack, which I've been showing throughout this video. From medium range, you can attach yourself to an enemy, drag yourself in, leap up and slam. The leap up is a physical evade, so if an enemy isn't attacking high enough or catches you as you go up, you will literally evade the attack, and most often that happens. Obviously, it's a fast downward slam, dealing good damage, staggering, leading to fatal attacks, ideally used with a slower weapon that has a slower moveset. Essentially, if I had to pick one Legion arm for an entire playthrough, it would be this one, specifically when fully upgraded, of course, where it's at its best. And as a neutral damage type, it's tied more to your weapon. So what you can do is buff up your weapon with the correct damage type. Say I'm fighting carcasses, I need fire damage. Well, it's still going to benefit from that fire damage. As you can see, I slam down and build up fire damage all the same. So if I had to pick one Legion arm, and I'd say the best one overall, it'd be the puppet string. And so in this video, I wanted to highlight that's probably the best one. Okay, the final 3 and some of the best weapons in the game. Shout out and thank you to Josh for providing the footage for this. Starting with Uroboros Eye, which you can buy from Alidoro or Hugo, depending on your choice with those characters at this point in the game. You need the boss Soul of Laxia the Complete, who is a boss you face in Chapter 11. Scaling at first with C in Motivity and B in Technique, it's decent in that perspective, sure, but it's the moveset that's really nice here. A circular blade that swings wide on the fast lights, double striking with the charged heavies in a vertical way, which you can do twice for 4 big hits. All very fine, but the weapon really shines when we look at the Fable arts, like Storm Notice, which causes the weapon to spin, and that improves its ticking damage. The weapon is ideally paired with that Arm of God amulet we looked at earlier, since the ticks of damage are so fast and consistent with this weapon, especially when buffed up. The Fable art's a bit expensive for its nature, but with 5 bars to work with, you should be able to maintain that buff when using it. Having said that, the mid-range throw attack, which is the Wandering Moon Fable art, is insane and the best part of the weapon. Throwing the weapon deals many ticks of damage, again from range safety. Pretty incredible since it's also 2 bars of Fable to do, and you can build up that physical damage with that amulet. So yeah, a quick look at this one. Really, it's very good, and with very strong build potential, I recommend it. Next up, we have another strength style focused weapon, the ultra slow, ultra heavy hitting, the Noblesse Oblige. Also a boss ergo weapon. You can buy it via Alidoro or Hugo, depending on things, after defeating Simon Manus, who might be your final boss of the game, depending on your choices. One of the best, honestly, in terms of output weapons and motivity weapons for sure in the game. Starting with A scaling motivity with D in Technique, it means business, you can push it higher. The moveset is standard, sadly, slams and swings like other blunt hammer motivity weapons. Best served by running heavies, or either full charge heavies or tap heavies to cause staggers really well, or use, the puppet string slam to overcome the slowness. Thankfully, we have Endure here, again one of the best Fable arts for this type of weapon. Ignoring enemy attacks, reducing the damage massively, which is huge, and all for a very cheap Fable at that. But more importantly, one of the strongest attacks in the whole game, Ergo Release, dealing a stupid amount of damage with a pretty fast slam down for the weapon speed, in exchange, unfortunately, for Ergo to actually get value out of it. So if you have no Ergo, there's no point using that Fable art. It consumes a varying amount, a percent based on how much you have at the time, seemingly starting at about 500 as a baseline. The Ergo cost is well worth it though, especially if you're dealing with a strong enemy, whether that's a boss, mini-boss, or whatever. And to be honest, by the time you get this weapon, Ergo's gonna matter a lot less, and if you go into New Game Plus, you'll have more than enough. So it hits ultra hard. It's like the highest scaling, or one of the highest scaling motivity weapons. If you want to do the biggest bursts in single hits, this is probably your weapon. Lastly for the list, it's the final weapon of the entire game, Proof of Humanity. An awkward one because you need to face the true final boss of the game, which means making a specific choice at the very end. I think it's safer if I just tell you to look up how to do this, so I don't just say ridiculous spoilers in this video. You must trigger the true final boss fight to then take its boss Ergo, to then trade that boss Ergo for the weapon. In my opinion, this is the coolest weapon in the game. Dual swords is just my thing, and these weapons split into 2 during the heavy attacks and during one of the Fable arts. As a weapon, it starts as a shockingly balanced weapon. I thought it'd be all about technique, but it's actually more balance in B motivity and B in technique. Pretty ideal for this game, to be honest, because it seems to prefer when you have a balance of damage stats. But I love the weapon moveset. Light attacks are super quick single sword attacks, while heavy attacks use both, whether that's a quick heavy, a charged heavy, or even a running heavy. It comes with 30 crit rate, so you'll be regularly critting with various attacks, and the Fable art grind grind will increase the chance in which you'll get those crits, and that's well worth it. Meanwhile, Link Slash allows you to go hard with a triple attack combo, using both weapons to strike and spin in a very visually satisfying combo. There's also, strangely, a decent weapon for basic guarding. But yeah, I gotta say, this is one of the best balanced weapons in the game, visually my favorite, and I rate it very high because of that. But there you have it. That's my overview of what I believe to be the best weapons and items you'll find in chapters 7 to 11. Obviously, there's more weapons in this game that are top tier, even some are found very early in the game. But these are the weapons and items I think are most important to know about in that final section. I hope this overview has been helpful to you, and hopefully not too directly spoilery, considering some of the topics. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching, see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.